Hey, good morning, everybody. Alex Salazar. I go by Alex as introduced. With me is Dan Brown. I'll do my intro first. Yeah, I live over in Everett. I'm on the west side. I actually went to Central for my undergrad, but then went to UW for the master's. That's where I live with you guys. I'm joking. I work for CISA now. I started in January. Before that, I was actually working at UW's Information Security Office. Before that, I was actually active duty military for about 5 years. Did the ROTC at Central, now in the National Guard. I think so. I know Andrew Vandenhoek. I think he used to be pretty plugged in with y'all. He connected me with y'all, and hopefully we'll maintain a relationship since he stands on this side of the but yeah, looking forward to speaking a little about CISA and a little bit about a specific topic that you may have heard about and try to shed some light on what is cyber threat.
Dan Brown. I spent 17 years on campus here at WSU, working in system security realm for housing. Then I was information security officer at Community College in Spokane. And like Alex, I started in January at CISA. So I'm very familiar with higher ed. My MBA is from WSU. I got a full employee here, go Cougs. I've had season football and basketball tickets for years. And yeah, we'll tell you what we do and offer Alex's presentation.
How'd I get in there, Dan? Man. I'm sorry.
You know, and that's the thing. So your undergrad's from Central, but you don't really talk about Central. Once you get that UW stain, it never goes away.
We're always having these fights. So yeah, today we'll go over what is CISA. CISA, that's how we pronounce it. CISA compared to partner agencies. A little bit into cyber threat intel, which is the job I had at UW, and then give you some examples of what, there's theory and then what's been some application of it. My coworker Ron always says, this is him, first year InfoSec in the 10th year. As you can see, I'm about in my 5th year. Dan's been able to hold it back.
How'd you get the current picture of Ron?
Yeah. So what it, yeah.
Oh, okay. So Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. It's a mouthful. Security is so important. We have it in there twice. We're the newest agency in the federal government. We've been in existence since 2018. Prior to that, we were in DHS. We were in NPPD. We were another agency under DHS that was more loosely focused around cyber and physical security. But when they established us in 2018, they established us with a vision of secure and resilient infrastructure for the American people. And our mission is to lead the national effort to understand, manage, and reduce risk to our cyber and physical infrastructure. So that's we have to see some centers listed.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're responsible for the 16 critical infrastructures. That includes water, wastewater, energy, emergency services, IT, communications, basically anything that is important to sustain the American way of life. We want to be able to turn the water on, just like little chats, flush a toilet, make sure you turn your lights on. And they work. No, you're fine. And the other important thing is to consider is critical infrastructure. 85% of it is owned by the private sector. So we also talk quite a bit to, the Avistas and folks like that, and want to make sure that they share information with us and we with them on potential threats.
Sometimes my coworkers are a little crude, so they don't want to get us in trouble.
It's a husky. He's still learning. Anyway, so yeah, in government facilities, that's kind of where higher ed falls in. We cover K through 12 and higher education. So we talked to folks about their security posture and how we can help them with it.
Of course, Murphy's Law, man.
Okay. Sure I can.
Murphy's Law. What just happened? I think it just busted.
All right, regions.
There you go.
So CISA is organized into 10 regions, and these are the same regions that FEMA covers. We are part of Region 10, which includes Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Alaska. Within Washington, we have 4 cybersecurity advisors, 3 of which are on the west side, and I'm on the east side, based out of Spokane area. So I cover Eastern Washington and North Idaho. That is us.
So you may be wondering, newest federal agency, there's other agencies that are ready for this cybersecurity gig. You got CyberCon, you got the NSA. So what the heck does CISA do? So hopefully I kind of want to highlight this is not comprehensive or official analysis. This is Alex's approach to understanding all these agencies, just from a couple months being with CISA, understanding where we're at. So over on the right-hand side, I put operational intelligence. And I wanted to put offense, but my boss said that's too forward. But obviously you got the likes of the CIA, the NSA, and then Cybercom under the DoD, which I think a lot of you guys have scholarships through the DoD. But yeah, so this is when it comes out going after advanced persistent threats. This is a nation state. The nation state, like these are the people that kind of are really commissioned and have the budget for that. When it comes to investigations, cybercrime prosecution, and I'm putting intelligence under all of these because even as Zachary was pointing, we're always getting those indicators of compromise. We don't really get to find out the newest exploit unless somebody shares about it. So we're all doing it. But when it comes to investigations, cybercrime prosecution, you have the FBI, the Secret Service, which I learned they actually do financial crime, and that's actually like when it comes to treasury and monetary. The Secret Service is really that's their place. They're there to protect the dollar. We have our own kind of homeland security investigations, and then does anybody know this symbol? Say it out loud. The Federal Trade Commission. So when it comes to cyber criminals, they're trying to help victims. This is really it's really these 3 and a few others. But when it comes to an organization failing to protect your social security, failing to protect your personal data, or doing really malicious things with your data, that's where the FTC comes into that commerce side. So I wanted to put that up here because it's on that other end. They're there protecting consumers like you and I from just bad security practice. And some of that's done through the Blindly Act, which is banking. You got PCI, which is kind of all the credit card swipes and stuff, and a couple others that have come down through there. So lastly, if you don't investigate, if you don't prosecute, if you're not attacking nation states, then what the heck does this do? Well, I'm glad you asked. We do resiliency, policy, and self-defense. That's really a great way to sum up. So obviously we read our mission statement initially, but really where we reside, and kind of like NIST, is educating what we call left of the bank, left of that cyber incident. Trying to get people's resiliency up, patching, education of not using legacy systems, or education of not putting stuff up public infrastructure on self-defense, of teaching them like, hey, you need to have logs, otherwise you don't know what's going on in your environment, teaching them of firewalls and segmenting, stuff of that matter. And that's really where we reside. Now we'll work, we're all partners. We'll work with these agencies, but our real mission is left of the bank. And we also say right of the bank, because these guys will come in, collect all the evidence, charge the charges, and then we kind of come in afterwards and do some after action reviews, update security plans, stuff like that.
You guys are the actual White Hats.
The white hats, maybe.
Yeah. NSA is, we pretend to be white hats. We're actually black hats.
There you go.
We're the ones criminal.
Yeah, so that's about it. Any other questions on federal agencies? Cool. Again, that wasn't comprehensive. So I was talking to Gabriel. He asked a specific topic, like what's a specific career you could step into. And something I was doing at UW was cyber threat intelligence. Just by raise of hands, has anybody heard of cyber threat intelligence before today? No? Oh, well, kind of. It's a buzzword. It's kind of like you're in the military force multiplier. Like it's a buzzword. It's been a big buzzword. AI, it's kind of like AI. It's a buzzword. We need threat intel. It's going to solve our problems. So we'll really go into defining what it is. It's a newer field, kind of. But has anybody heard of the Center for Internet Security, CIS? No? Oh, that's a good group, especially if you're going to be in cybersecurity. They actually set like baseline images. They'll do an executable that runs on like Linux or Windows and tell you if you're hardened. It's a really good group. They're nonprofit. Are they nonprofit?
They are nonprofit, but they do offer some pay-to-play services. But they have baseline tools. You can download a VM that already meets the NIST standards. You can run an executable that will review your code and look obvious.
Yeah, it's a good group. And it's kind of like they're almost like CISA before CISA, but basically they're there to educate, provide free resources. One of the things they do is they give definitions, and just here's a definition from them. But if it's too long, you didn't read. Really, cyber intelligence is providing analysis of cyber related topics. It isn't new in the sense that Intel's been going around since like back the Spartan days, right, or whatever. Back since militaries are fighting each other, you always wanted to obtain information and analyze that information. So cyber threat intel looks at it that same way. But really the scope is you need to understand what you're looking at before you analyze it. So that's where that cyber headline comes in. And to really describe it, when I was going through Intel school, one of the stories we got told was a story of the Naval Warfare College was when B-17 flying over World War II, they kept getting shot down, right? And they were having this problem. So what they did is they took all the logs, like, hey, every bird that's made it home, where has it been hit? And so they're looking at this and then they're thinking, well, hey, like this is where, we need to harden this. This is where they're getting hit. And then some offshoot analysts. Yeah.
Wait, but are you looking for the ones that cannot?
Yeah, that sounds funny. Some offshoot analysts, somebody thinking outside the box. So it's like, well, that doesn't make sense. If these made it home, this is where it can get hit and it can make it home. This is critical. But if it's getting hit here, and in the cockpit, that's when it's getting shot down. And really, that's what honestly, with cyber threat intel, you got to have that mindset. You got to be able to look at the black space. So if you are getting those SysCon logs and you are blocking at the firewall a bunch of authentication tests, that's normal. Your babies are working. So you need to start thinking, well, what am I not seeing? What am I not seeing that's getting in? What are those SSH sessions that I'm not seeing? Something like that. So just, again, another intro into that.
Right, in your example of failed logins, if you're looking at all of those, they are failed, but you're seeing that and they're getting one.
Yeah. And next, we'll go into kind of where CISA stepped into the cyber threat intel. And one of those was the Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative that Dan will speak to a little bit.
So yeah, the Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative is a public-private partnership between industry partners and federal agencies. And the idea is we have security analysts, they have security analysts, they look for indicators of compromise, they look on the dark web for accounts for sale, that type of thing. We share information and notify each other when we see things that might be interesting. We talked about ransomware in here.
I did put it in there.
We did. Okay, you put it in. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So I'll go ahead. Ransomware. That's a prime example. So Earlier this week, we had someone that we got a notification about a college in Washington that had a compromised workstation with ransomware on it. And so we need to contact them in an out-of-band way. We're assuming that the threat actors could potentially be on their network and be able to see what they have, see correspondence, emails, so we don't have to send something and say, hey, this is Dan from the federal government. You might want to check your stuff, because bad guys could also see that, and then that might escalate their plans. So what we do is we try and contact them out of band, either via phone. One time, Alex looked on LinkedIn and was able to get a contact there. He called the CFO of one company and said, we really need to talk to your IT folks, and they were a bit concerned about it. Yeah, he found the number on the webpage, so it's kind of funny. But we ended up getting to the right people, and in that particular one, we found indicators of a lateral movement and accounts that had been compromised. And we offered some suggestions. You might want to reset all of your domain passwords and lock things down, start looking at logs, those type of things. So that's one of the things that the JCDC allows us to do. If we're sharing information, then we find out much earlier than we would have just by looking.
Yeah, and the great thing is they have Intel analysts that are kind of packaging this information into stories like that, and particularly into stakeholders. So that's where, we're not presenting, we're engaging with businesses to shore up their cybersecurity plans. We don't have time to be scouring on tour, initial access broker forums, maintaining that contact and stuff like that. So that's where it's like threat intel has been helpful for us and kind of a real practical application of it.
Well, and that's why I was looking at my phone a couple of times to see, we had one particular notification that was going on yesterday. I was looking to see if there's any more information. And all it is the T-shirt order from me.
Yeah. So got to go into some CTI examples. So I had this role at UW, and to give you an example of what we applied this to is, the Russian and Ukraine crisis came about. And I was trying to highlight what's the wording, what are all these agencies, where are all these, like what's going on? And we were getting a lot of warnings like, you need to shore up when killnet's going on over in the Ukraine that could spill out. We were just getting all these warnings. So what we did is kind of educate and kind of highlight. People were like, well, we're UW, we're not a target. I highlighted like, well, really, we really hit about I think it was 12 of the 16 critical infrastructure sectors. Like we're touching all this. And I think it's the same for Wazoo, because you guys pretty much have just about the same things. I want to say even sorry, I got allergies there. Defense industrial base. You guys have research in that space as well. I'm really trying to paint that picture that it's very possible, because of all our interconnections, that we could get spilled over some of the malicious code coming out of Ukraine. And it was happening localized. It never came to fruition, but that's just a highlight of ingesting. You never expect a cyber guy to have to ingest geopolitics, right? But it's just an example of kind of that intelligence piece.
And I think we actually sent a team to Ukraine. I think this is it. No, I think that's
cool. Next is kind of that cyber piece, right? So you're not just an intel analyst, you got to understand cyber, right? So Log4j came out about it still feels like yesterday. Anyway, raise your hand. Have you heard of the Log4j exploit? Good. Oh yeah. I hope the PhD. There you go. That's a conversation itself. So this came out, right? And the internet's going on fire. Like ABC News is talking about Java core exploits. It's like, what the heck's going on? Like they're usually reporting on other stuff. So this was a big exploit, but our leadership was just, it's not their expertise. And this was really a real technical one. because you had to understand Java core, you had to understand APIs, like you had to understand dependencies and why, like, you may not have a specific product that says Java, but if you look at the underlying dependencies, there is, and like you had to understand a lot of that. That's only an understanding you have from working in cyber. So that's where another piece of being a threat intel analyst, you got to paint this picture, talk about it, and then sum it up in digestible information for leaders to understand that, like, hey, the thing is, this is a powerful tool that we can't just get rid of. It's like very dependent on developers, but the exploitability of it is very high. And you got to explain that. So here's kind of an example like it, that like really all it takes is somebody with either Postman or either on a Linux command line to run this command at our webpage or something that's or some type of vulnerable host, and bam, now they're getting all this access into it, and it's unauthenticated, unauthenticated, and kind of it was unauthenticated. So you didn't need your past credentials. You were basically able to tap into an internal resource without any type of. It just bypassed firewalls. It bypassed a lot. And it was a big deal. And talking about the reason to take down these multiple targets and patch them up, or kind of we had to do an emergency patch. I know this is going to take down our webpage for a day or two, but this needs to be patched, like, because this is way too easy for the exploitability to happen. So that was kind of an example there. Lastly, to address this, so that was the exploit of it, and that's how the big fire. I think even our director, Jenny Sweet, said that it was the worst she had seen in a while. To kind of help with that, we actually came out with this initiative called Software Bills of Material, if you've heard of it. I think Dan will kind of talk about it here.
Yeah, basically the idea with the software bill of materials is when you purchase a product, an off-the-shelf product, it has all of those libraries and components in it that you may not be aware of, Log4j. So with the software bill of materials, it will let the people that buy or purchase the software know what is in it. So it'll have a list of everything, that all the components and versions that are part of that. So if that were to occur, if Log4j were to occur again or something like it, you could look and say, okay, in my software bill of materials, I see that this component is there and I need to mitigate and address that risk. So that's the intent.
Yeah, dependencies, components, all that good stuff. Cool. All right, kind of moving into, if big thing, you want a job, I'm sure. I mean, I was in your shoes a couple years ago. You want a job, right? That's the whole reason to go to college. You want to work in the space. Well, if you're interested in CISA, you want to get involved like Dan and I, you can go to CISA.gov/careers. And there's kind of two main pathways. There's the traditional, which is through usajobs.gov. So at CISA.gov, you'll see what types of jobs we have. And then USA Jobs, that's where the actual application happens. And we recognize that we're competing with Microsoft and Amazon and CrowdStrike for you guys, for employees. So there's actually this second service hiring pipeline that came about called the Cyber Service, or Cyber Talent Management System. This was actually meant to address the backlog that we see during the hiring timeline of like 3 to 8 months and stuff, get you guys in a little quicker, and also be able to offer competitive pay, because these traditional jobs reside on what is called the GS scale. But these new jobs are under what they call a cyber service, or CS scale. It's just the rules are different. It's easier. That's kind of the rule. There's less red tape to get you in. If you're also interested in student careers, you can email studentcareers@cisa.dhs.gov. And if you need help with a federal resume, put a tip here. You can also just find us by going to cisa.gov. Yeah, question.
You guys have your branch office for like this region in Seattle, right?
Yes.
And not for Seattle's cost of living?
Yeah, they do cost of living. Actually make a little more than that because he lives here where cost of living is a little less.
Right, so federal service has what's called locality pay. So in major cities, they offer a differential for like in Alaska, it's the entire state, but they offer a differential up to 39% or something, so it is substantial.
And the biggest cool thing that I've enjoyed, and I think the programs through the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, is cyber pay. And so after a year of employment, Dan and I will be eligible if we have the necessary certs for 25% bonus. And that's
Up to 25.
up to 25. Right. Now that's not in our contracts. That's currently a program that exists. And after they finish debating the budget, we'll see if it sticks around. But at least we're being told, at least my coworkers have it, and we're being told it's sticking around.
Right, and I think that's the intent of CTMS. They're gonna, with the cyber talent management systems, they're gonna offer a higher salary up front and just make that, not have the cyber pay eventually. But we're trying to compete with the industry. And that's difficult, but we have good benefits. It's a good gig. The only thing I found interesting was background checks. It took 6 months for me to pass my top secret clearance. And it was, so if you do decide to get in federal service and they don't get back to you and it takes a long time, just consider that normal. I mean, they called my dad and asked him how long he'd known me and what he thought of me. I mean, you talk to my neighbors. Yeah, they asked him that. He laughed and no, but so anyway, it is a long process, and I felt like a criminal even though I wasn't. It's like, I think I did anything in college, I don't remember, but so it just takes a long time. And they have a backlog of that. Yeah, for us, it's kind of nice. In our positions, we're remote workers, so we're based out of our homes, and they give us a car, and we drive around and visit customer sites. So any given week, I mean, it's more traveling than I've been used to, but it's okay. I'm based in Eastern Washington. Like last week, I drove to Bristol for an engagement and then drove home. But I would say yes, we get they're pretty generous with leave. We occasionally get additional days off, and our boss is pretty flexible. Like last week, things were slow, and I'm like, can I take Thursday, Friday off? Sure. So,
Also, it's the government, so it's a little more stable. I mean, obviously right now with the budget, we're a little concerned, but for the most part, a lot of stability. So I have peers that have a program that did cybersecurity consulting, making about double what I'm making, but a lot of them shop or half the shop. So that's your trade-off, right? You can go for that really with a censure man the enemy that $200,000 fee consultant, but when the budget has an issue, it also snap. But also if you're smart with money, you have enough to rebound. Or with CISA, it's like just steady, it's maintained, and it's you're not really underpaid. I would also say we're kind of a little rare, and there's only about 120 of us cybersecurity advisors in the sorry, yeah. Take a look. There's also full-time remote positions. So we went to a training in Idaho Falls, and it was the first time a team from the vulnerability management team had ever met in person. They came from like Mississippi, Texas, and Montana to Idaho Falls. It's the first time they had ever met in person. They've been working virtually together for a year. So there's also very full-time remote position.
and we have in our positions, we have the ability to travel to the other states in our region and assist. Like Alex came over here, and I've assisted with assessments. A lot of flexibility, and I would say stability. I mean, like I said, the public sector, you're not necessarily going to get rich, but you are going to have a job. And in the cyberspace, Congress has been pretty supportive of us. Our director, Jenny Easterly, has been able to obtain funding and actually expand some of our programs where other agencies.
Here's our emails, our contacts. Feel free to email us.
Yeah. And we'll have cards out there on the table too. And if you have any questions about, job prospects, whether it's with us or someone else, or you just want to talk about the industry, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to, or either one of us would be happy to take a few minutes to talk to you. And I'd be happy to drive to campus and have a cup of coffee.
But yeah, if you please provide these slides, I'll put them up on our website so everyone can go back and look at them. Content.
Any other questions?
Yes, we had a speaker talk about ransomware. And that companies are paying, some large percentage of the profits to keep ransomware that paid. It's bad. I asked the question, what about government agencies and universities? And you said there was a ransomware on university account. Seems to be like federal agencies, government agencies, and universities should not pay that because it's taxpayer money. So what's happening in that realm?
So I'll speak briefly to cyber insurance. It's been changing. I mean, many of the agencies and colleges participate in pooled cyber insurance. So like in Washington, there's I think it's Accenture, but there's a pooled resource where everybody it's less money, but I think for the state, the yearly cap is 5 million. So if 4 or 5 people had a really bad year and you were the 6th person, you might not get any money. And cyber insurance has changed. In the last 2 years, the requirements are a lot more stringent than they used to be. And, that's, when we talk at customer engagement, we talk about you need to have annual cybersecurity awareness training. You need to have external penetration testing. You need to have an incident response plan. There's all these check marks that are part of your policy now. And if you don't meet all of those requirements, they're not going to pay out. And the coverage is more expensive and it doesn't pay out as much as it used to. Usually, I think the insurance provider has weighs in quite a bit on whether you pay or not. Because I've known people that have paid within a 100-mile radius and got their data back. And I've known people that have refused to pay and just burnt things to the ground and started anew, which, it all depends on, your backup strategy, your incident response plan, and how quickly you can respond to what you have.
We're also faced with the decision to pay like a $30,000 ransom. Sometimes they're like 1 or 2 Bitcoin if you're mid-size or 30 or 60,000 compared to the $200,000 refurbishment. As a private company, that's the decision they're faced with, and that's why they go easier path.
But most of the colleges do have coverage. I know UW does, ASU does. And they'll weigh in as to whether you should pay or not. But I understand your point. I mean, is it an appropriate use of public funds? But if you're spending 30 and saving 100, then, the delta's still 70K.
Position of the government, and especially the Bureau says that don't spend, that don't pay it.
Yeah, they always.
Because you could be funding a transnational terrorist organization and then get into legal fees from that perspective. And then additionally, it's that payment that keeps them going and going on to the next one. And then there's never assurance. They can come back and get you again. I was at an organization about ransom, and it's a real business model. They have a note, there's a customer helpline, and there's a chat room where you can speak to a customer service team. That's what they call it. It's like,
Well, and to your point, I've heard of many cases where they you'll pay it, they'll unlock it, and then they'll ask again and say, we're either going to release your data or you give us another payment. where does it stop?
You think legislation may come down, we were to pay and then.
Kind of is.
I think in what, was it somewhere in Europe, there was a country that did that, where they said it was stupid, you couldn't pay.
Did it have an effect? Like, it seemed like if it doesn't pay, the rest of the companies are.
You gotta, I mean, you have to understand some orgs just completely failed at backups and in documenting device configurations. It's like you have 15 years of an enterprise build that's you have to rebuild. And maybe their IT budget was big at one point, and now it's down to 1 or 2 people. And like they'll be out of business for it could be a thing that bankrupts them. And so like we pay the ransom and get our data back and get all our configurations back. It isn't just the data, it's they're locked out of their domain controllers, they're locked out of their Windows servers. It's like they can't do anything.
Yeah, and I know we've had a couple issues on campus. It's been a few years, but I know the foundation a number of years ago had an issue. And yeah, it happens.
You mentioned at the beginning, CISA handles policy. I'm assuming that you help update like within the federal agencies, but do you also get to maybe advise the legislative branch on setting policies and regulations in the private sector in terms of like baseline?
The two of us don't, but
Well, someone.
you know, I would say it's the executive level, but you know, at our level, we do have incident response templates and policy templates on our website. And if you fill out the incident response template and you want us to review it, you can send it to us. We'll take a look and offer suggestions and help where we can. We're mostly preventative and you know, policy, and we're trying to help them reduce risk and be a better.
Kind of like one thing is that there's this other thing called secure by default, secure by design. That's another kind of like this, and it's because we're only 5 years old. The only policy has been affecting federal government. We don't really have anything that's touching private boards. But we would like CISA is seen as the subject matter expert for information. Best practice.
You're a resource for anyone.
Right.
Oh, yeah, no, that's a big, yeah. Both Rod and I are private sector. That's what we do. Oh, and we're private sector. I work with Bellevue.
Yeah, keep coming, Ron. He's done that before, but
Sorry.
I don't look like that, Yoda. I'm hoping that's Ron. He's on the other side of the state.
I work with a lot of Bellevue and like, really private businesses.
Yeah, and same here. I mean, we have an engagement with a training company in Spokane. I mean, they're related to, they're in the information technology sector, but they're not public, funded by taxpayers. And as I said earlier, 85% of the critical infrastructure is owned by private industries. So that's part of the reason we're in existence, because they didn't, a lot of times they don't want to share their information with the federal government. We're trying to kind of be that middle ground. And when we do an assessment on site, we have a protected critical infrastructure information document that they sign and we sign, and it says that we can't release anything we find to either civil litigation, any of freedom of information requests, anything like that. And so the competitors won't get it. We're trying to be a trusted partner where we are. But we'll try to.
Alex, I apologize if I missed it. Did you say you did 5 years active duty?
Yeah.
After? Did you say what branch? Like what?
Army.
Army.
I was an intel collector. 35 life.
So we have ROTC, I'm ROTC.
Yeah, get into cyber. If you're doing Army, there's a cyber entry test. Or if Also for you guys, I have a peer who did scholarship for service to be used under ROTC scholarship for your undergrad or your 9/11 for undergrad. There's also a scholarship for service that will pay for your grad program. And you just owe the government federal service time. Not, you could be in the military. You can work for forestry. You can work for CISA.
So what's the other one here? Heroes for.
Hiring our heroes is a different, that's if you're getting now. But any action, so that's something I've seen service members use because if they use everything for undergrad, they're out of money for masters. And also, if you don't have money for your master's, scholarship for service is nice. You have to, anyway, you just owe the government sometimes.
Although I will say, there's a significant portion of former military folks that are in CISA. When I was hired, I was given a 38-page document of acronyms. And there's still ones that aren't on there. I've learned. So where are all of you in your programs? Are we junior, senior level? Are we graduating?
So how many of you graduated? Graduated, right?
Sorry, guys.
Graduated at division, second lieutenants,
Nice.
all of you. Okay, and Adam, you're still, units, Adam's also our chief. How many others are juniors?
They come here, going,
Going into junior year. Yeah. Going into senior year.
Okay.
How about, going to sophomore year? Anybody, freshman? Okay. There are other students in the program as well. Already been through the workshop, actually. Many of them are seniors or juniors. They may have started as freshmen. We've got 51 students that have gone through the program. Together, or are in the program.
So do your programs involve any certifications?
Yes, good question. So we have reasons. But I think maybe what you're asking is that, we plan to become certified for cyber operations. Some cyber operations and cyber defense, but we have to offer those courses for like 3 years. Show that we offer the courses. And so that's the process of things. Actually, you can probably better to see what.
Sure, yeah, in terms of CompTIA, those guys. Right. A lot of our speakers over the last couple of weeks or last week have talked about those stuff. As an institute, Washington State University is to get certified as a Center for Academic Excellence. So that's yeah, yeah, and we just in the fall, this coming fall, we'll be starting an actual standalone cybersecurity bachelor program. And so to get certified as a CA, that has to have been going for 3 years, and initial graduating class. So, but we're laying the groundwork for that right now.
So
We have three certificates that have been put in place by the university.
nice.
Cyber basics, cyber fundamentals, which is pretty rigorous, and then a graduate student cyber certificate. It's not NSA, something that shows on your stuff.
Well, and you mentioned CompTIA, and I will say I was formerly at community college in Spokane. I was there for about a year. And it's interesting, the workforce training folks and the academia side have different perspectives, and I think both are very valid. But, if you have some time after you graduate and before you get a job, consider, a security plus or a network plus or some type of industry certificate or certification, because it's just another differentiator. I mean, if they're looking at a whole bunch of applications and you've got 5 people that have the same degree and one of them happens to have that additional certification, I'm not saying that you're not going to teach much of the same material in your programs, because you will, but it's just something to consider. And I will say, I presented at SFCC about 3 weeks ago, and they have some workforce training programs, grants where they got 75% off their CompTIA courses. So, for example, Security Plus, it normally would be a couple $1,000 for training and the test, is now $400. So, I mean, there are programs out there and grants that will allow you to get some of that. So stay with your, your bachelor's, but consider those other things as a differentiator.
I really recommend the same group that does CISSP as the certified in cybersecurity. And they have this program right now where you get it for free. It's called, I think it's like 1 million certified in cybersecurity. So you can sign up for this, take the self-paced training, and then you get something to put on your resume. It says you're certified in cybersecurity from ISC Squared. And ISC Squared is a pretty well-known organization.
Yep, the big ones, CompTIA, ISC Squared, CISA. There's a handful of industry. That's
Yeah.
The other thing that we did was just to be involved in this program. Workshop, the research project,